We're in part 17 of the Revelation study. We've done 3 sections of sevens. We've had the 7 seals, the 7 trumpets, and the 7 histories. Each one culminates in the destruction of Jerusalem, showing us that these are not chronological, sequential punishments, but that these are different views of the same events. The language is spiraling and getting more intense, but the events themselves are not. At the end of the 7 histories, we saw the angels, and now we move on to the bowls of wrath. When the angels appeared, they had denounced those who followed the beasts. They were condemning them to the lake of fire. We'll talk more about the lake of fire later on. And they announced the pouring out of the bowls of wrath. The bowls of wrath represent the last of the plagues. Preterists or not, interpreters of Revelation, coming at this from a variety of models, agree that this does not mean these are the final plagues in temporal chronology. They are listed last because they are the final ones that John is shown. In their description and their severity, they are the pinnacle of what has been seen before. The seals affected 1/4 of the people of the land, the trumpets 1/3, and now all unbelievers are subject to the judgments of the bowls or the vials. Again, the spiral is indicating the severity of the description and significance of these curses. It's not in their actual sequence of occurrence to more and more people. One of the 4 living creatures from chapter 4 delivers these bowls to the angels. The narrative view is still that of looking into heaven and into the sanctuary. These creatures are still before the throne of God, just as they were when they called forth the horsemen in response to the opening of the seals. So much has passed in Revelation that we tend to forget that all these events are tied into one vision. This demonstrates again that the visions are all one part. We've seen many events transpire since John entered the throne room in the Spirit, and so we can forget that this is still occurring during that single throne room vision. As before, the first 4 plagues affect the creatures of earth. This time, the descriptions of these 4 plagues, as well as the remaining ones, are even more vividly tied to the judgments poured out on Egypt in the Exodus. The same festering sores break out. The water turns to blood. Instead of hail and lightning from the skies, in Revelation, scorching heat strikes the land. There is a palpable darkness over the land, and the water is dried up for a crossing. Even the armies crossing the Euphrates are pictured both as demons and as Exodus-like frogs. Surely we are meant to see here in Revelation that these are the very judgments that God has continually warned Israel about, and that he called down upon Egypt for abusing his firstborn son, Israel. The 7th trumpet sounds, and, reminding me again of Jesus' cry from the cross, we hear, "It is done," as we see an Exodus-like hailstorm fall upon the city. Josephus records that when Rome launched its final attack on Jerusalem, their catapults slung 100-pound stones on Jerusalem that made the sky white with their appearance. As Revelation 16:19 describes it in apocalyptic language, Josephus also writes of the city splitting into 3 competing factions during the siege and doing great battle within itself. He writes, "The catapults that all the legions had ready prepared for them were admirably contrived, but still more extraordinary ones belonged to the 10th legion. Those that threw darts and those that threw stones were more forcible and larger than the rest. Now the stones that were cast were of the weight of a talent, and they were carried 2 furlongs and further. As for the Jews, they at first watched the coming of the stone, for it was of a white color, and it so happened that the sedition at Jerusalem was revived and parted into 3 factions, and that one faction fought against the other." Josephus, The Jewish Wars, 5:1-1. The language of the Exodus plagues abounds, but one that could warrant a second look is the drying up of the Euphrates for the armies to cross to attack Jerusalem. The river Euphrates is symbolic of the border of Israel, and seen in this light, Rome easily swept across the river and gathered up many foreign troops from various countries under its command to join the attack. Some of these troops came from Syria, east of the Euphrates. In reference to a similar attack in the past, Paul Blackham writes of Cyrus and his attack on Babylon in his book-by-book study on Revelation. He wrote, "The 6th bowl takes us right to the story of the crossing of the Red Sea that has been in view since Revelation 15:2-4. The Old Testament prophesies that this judgment would include the drying up of the Euphrates River." He quotes Isaiah 11:15 and 44:27, along with Jeremiah 50:38 and 50:36, and again Zechariah 10, verse 11 on this subject. Back to Blackham. The prophecy was fulfilled by Cyrus's diversion of the river, Isaiah 44, 27 and 28, which allowed his army to cross the river, enter Babylon unexpectedly, and defeat it, as reported by historians Herodotus, Xenophon, and Cyropedia. The means by which God delivers the godly, drying up water, are sometimes used as the means by which he punishes the ungodly. God executed judgment against Babylon by raising up Cyrus and his princes, who were to come from the east, Isaiah 41:2, from the rising of the sun, Isaiah 41:25, and Isaiah 46:11. God made his ways straight, speaking of Cyrus, Isaiah 45:13, Jeremiah 50:41, and 51:11. Jeremiah 51:28 refers to kings whom God was preparing to bring against Babylon. The victory by Cyrus led to Israel's release from captivity, Isaiah 44:26-28 and 45:13. Paul Blackham is quoting G.K. Beale here in his book-by-book study. I won't go quite so far here as to suggest that the drying up of the Euphrates had become an idiom for this type of attack and fulfillment, but with Rome recapitulating this attack on Revelation's Babylon, which is Jerusalem, by crossing the Euphrates, it is not difficult to see the phrase as a figurative reference to Cyrus's attack. In a similar vein, people today are said to cross the Tiber when they convert to Roman Catholicism, although they never come near an actual river. We see that God's word always comes to pass, and that he will defeat all of his enemies. This truth, revealed and fulfilled in history, is applicable throughout the ages and to the end of history. But that applicability does not mean that John is writing about such future times. We now move to the third vision, the harlot and the great city. This next vision, the third of the four in the spirit visions, is of the harlot or prostitute sitting on the beast. In the previous 7 histories, Revelation has shown the woman, true Israel, in conflict with Satan. And now Revelation shows the harlot, earthly Jerusalem, in an alliance with him. This is reminiscent of how the book of Proverbs pits the woman, wisdom, against the adulterous woman, folly. One leads to life and the other to death. Revelation 17, verse 3. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. From Revelation alone, before we even consult another biblical or external evidence, we can plainly see that this harlot, Babylon, is actually Jerusalem. The previous judgments have all resulted in the destruction and fall of this, quote, great city. The great city, Revelation 11. The great city that symbolically is called Sodom and Egypt, where their Lord was crucified. This refers to Jerusalem, the great city, which crucified Jesus and has broken the covenant with God. They have made themselves the Babylon whore. This is no surprise for a reader of the Old Testament, which consistently talks of unfaithful Israel as an adulteress and a prostitute. Revelation 11, 13, and 14. And at that hour there was a great earthquake, and 1/10 of the city fell. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the rest were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe has passed. Behold, the third woe is soon to come. Revelation 14:8. Another angel, a second, followed, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who made all nations drink the wine of the passion of her sexual immorality. Jeremiah and Isaiah refer to the fall of Old Testament Babylon. In those books, Yahweh tells his followers to come out of Babylon, and in the New Testament, Jesus tells his people to come out of Babylon, or sin. This city now is also the kingdom of sin. We've seen that the great city is Jerusalem already, and in our next passage, we see that this great city is the Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18. Revelation chapter 16, verses 18 and 19, the end of the bowls of wrath. And there were flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, and a great earthquake such as there had never been since man was on the earth, so great was that earthquake. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And God remembered Babylon the Great, to make her drain the cup of the wine of the fury of his wrath. In Isaiah 51, Israel quits drinking the cup of wrath and passes it to her enemies. This is speaking in my mind of Jesus as the true Israel. He had prayed that the cup would pass from his hand. After he drank and suffered, he quit drinking, and it went to Babylon, his tormentors. Babylon is the one who must drink now, just as the Babylonian Empire was made to drink in Isaiah and Jeremiah. In those books, the oracle against the enemies of God always reached its climax with Babylon drinking the cup of wrath and then being destroyed. Revelation 17:5. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Jumping to verse 18, and the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. Revelation 18:2, 4, and 6. And he called out with a mighty voice, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons. Then I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you take part in her sins. Pay her back as she herself has paid back others, and repay her double for her deeds. Mix a double portion for her in the cup that she mixed. Verse 10. They will stand far off in fear of her torment and say, Alas, alas, you great city, you mighty city, Babylon, for in a single hour your judgment has come. Continually we see Revelation proving that the great city, which is Jerusalem, the slayer of Jesus, is the Babylon harlot in question. Revelation 18:16. Alas, alas, for the great city that was clothed in fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold, with jewels, and with pearls. What city was like the great city? Kenneth Gentry, Jr. shows us that this relates the great city to the Levitical priest's garments, the fine linen, linking it to the priesthood, and therefore the temple in Jerusalem. We also see that where the Levite had holy to the Lord written on his forehead, this harlot has the parody written on her forehead. The writing on her forehead calls her the mother of earth's prostitutions and abominations. The Jewish temple authorities claim to be holy, but they are the very opposite. They are not the woman, wisdom, but the adulteress, folly. Revelation 18, verse 19. And they threw dust on their heads as they wept and mourned, crying out, Alas, alas, for the great city, where all who had ships at sea grew rich by her wealth. So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will be found no more. Modern readers can be surprised to find out how significant Jerusalem was in Jesus' day. Its temple was one of the great wonders of the world. It was an incredibly rich trading partner, and other great cities were jealous of the wealth that poured into the great city in the form of its temple tax. Recall that upwards of 15% of the Roman Empire consisted of Jews, and they would be paying this tax to Jerusalem from all over the Roman Empire. Revelation 18:24. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who had been slain on earth. Jesus is repeating here what he said of Jerusalem during his earthly ministry. Jesus told them that they would have to account for the blood of the prophets from the righteous Abel to Zechariah. Matthew 23:31. Jesus says, So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. Go ahead then and complete what your ancestors started. You snakes, you brood of vipers, how will you escape being condemned to hell? Therefore, I am sending you prophets and sages and teachers. Some of them you will kill and crucify, others you will flog in your synagogues and pursue from town to town. And so upon you will come all the righteous blood that had been shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly, I tell you, all this will come on this generation. Verse 37 through 39. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I have longed to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate. For I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. This evidence, directly from the account in Revelation, ought to be more than enough to establish to the reader that we have Jerusalem in sight here, and she has been singled out for destruction. In fact, Jerusalem has been the focus from the beginning. This harlot, the adulterous wife, has been the subject of God's divorce decree and is being stoned to death in the final vial of wrath. Although Revelation has demonstrated to us that Jerusalem is the harlot, we can see that this was also foretold in the Old Testament. The split kingdom became the sisters Aholah and Aholibah. the adulterous prostitutes in Ezekiel 23. And we have seen earlier in this study that Jerusalem is the harlot in the divorce case that God is bringing. The majority still teach that the harlot is Rome, but we can see above that this is not the primary association. Others see that Rome is in view, but that it's being pointed to through the first reference to earthly Jerusalem of the 1st century. The fact that the harlot is sitting atop the seven-headed beast, which Revelation even tells us is Rome, makes it awkward to claim that the harlot is Rome. When the angel talks to John, he isn't adding mystery to mystery, but adding clarity when he explains the vision. The clarity is to identify Rome as the beast. Revelation 17:7. Then the angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. Verse 8. The beast, which you saw, once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. The beast here has apparently died, but has been resurrected. Revelation 17:9. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 hills on which the woman sits. Contemporary evidence is clear that this refers to Rome, the city on the 7 hills. Revelation 17:10. They are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain for only a little while. The beast who once was and now is not is an 8th king. He belongs to the 7 and is going to his destruction. The 8th is not one of the 7, but is out of or of the 7. The 8th is Rome itself, resurrected as per the number 8, which stands for resurrection.